Last time on the WizardCast.
Pablo, ¿dónde está el biblioteca?
En el baño, por supuesto.
Pero, ¿dónde están mis libros? ¡Mis libros!
Los quime para la cena. Conocimiento delicioso.
¡Qué lástima! Pero, ¿por qué? ¿Por qué?
¿Por qué? El gato.
No!
And now the conclusion of the WizardCast.
I'm Brian Kwong.
And I'm Mark Ross.
We're Salesforce experts that love talking about technology and Salesforce.
We also love humor. Doesn't mean we're actually good at it.
In the Salesforce community, I'm known as the Salesforce Wizard, likely due to me wearing a wizard hat at Salesforce events.
And I'm known as Salesforce Yoda for pretty much the same reason.
You should see the ears.
We have a passion to help educate and entertain people.
So we've joined forces to create WizardCast.
We've got tips and best practices.
We talk with interesting people.
All mixed with quote-unquote jokes and humor.
Welcome
to the
WizardCast. Well, Mark, it's another episode of the WizardCast, and I don't know about you.
Yes?
But, you know, once in Wisconsin in this time of year, it's really rummage sale season.
Rummage? Is that like a garage sale?
It's like a garage sale or a yard sale. Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, but with rummage.
Yeah, because you rummage through someone else's trash, essentially, to see if you want to buy it.
I thought it was like... So it's not like I don't need less fiber or anything.
Right. It's not roughage. It's rummage.
Okay. All right. I'm glad we got that.
Yeah, and then it's very common for people to put out ads to advertise their rummage sale. I saw one for radio for sale for $1, volume stuck on full. And you know what? I just can't turn that down.
Why do I do this again? Why do I subject myself to this?
For the notoriety? The excellent pay and health benefits?
Are you serious?
No, I'm saying I'm paying you well and providing you health benefits as an employee of the WizardCast.
Because I haven't seen anything of that.
Well, it's not my fault if you haven't filed your W-2 with HR.
I'll file your W-2 up your HR.
Or is that a W-9, I don't actually remember what the name of the form.
Can we keep on? Can we go on with the show now?
Anyways, yeah. Well, Mark, it's time to thank the sponsors that make this episode possible.
Oh, okay. You know what? Maybe I should just go, because this is clearly just going to keep going.
WizardCast is brought to you by the fine people at Soylent Green. You know them as the company bringing you food-like substitutes to your neighborhood grocery and restaurants. Soylent Green is announcing their new Soylent sausages, great for breakfast or for a grill out. So head out and enjoy a Soylent Green sausage today. Soylent Green, the employees make up the company.
Didn't we already do Soylent Green jokes for sponsors on this?
Yeah, they came back to us. They really wanted seconds.
Okay. This is too much.
I also have here a note to announce that they're hiring in their packaging department. For some reason, they're having a lot of turnout over there.
Gee, I wonder why.
I hear working there is a real grind to the employees.
Okay.
Mark, you may recall we were at the World Tour together in Chicago back in
June.
It
was definitely June.
Yeah, and while we were there, we did a lot of things. We did a live recording there, and we did that as an episode earlier. And we also interviewed some people. And one of the people we interviewed was the great Kevin Poorman.
Indeed. And he had some very interesting things to say about, I don't remember, it was like a month and a half ago. Seriously, I can't remember what we talked about.
It was about code and ISVs.
Yeah. No, I got that.
Heroku.
There was Heroku.
I mean, I pay attention to my interviewers.
I pay attention at the time. What more do you want?
And one ear out the other, huh?
What do they want?
So
I make an attempt.
So we're going to go back in time, and we're going to go talk to Kevin, and you'll know we're there when you hear us speaking in hushed tones and there's a lot of background noise. WizardCast is brought to you by Kevin Poorman Industries. Kevin Poorman Industries, guaranteed to line your pockets with something other than cash. Poorman, when you want to join everyone else.
I have nothing further to add to that.
You heard it from the founder of Kevin Poorman Industries, ladies and gentlemen. You want to buy Poorman today.
Can we stop harassing this poor guy here? Seriously, you're making fun of his lack of money. You are pouring salt in his wound. He is suffering, and it's your fault.
I'm going to name my first son Richard.
Richard Poorman, or is it Dick Poorman? I love it. Rich Poorman. I love it. So this was our terrible combination of sponsorship / introduction to our guest speaker today, who is Kevin Poorman. He works at Salesforce, and we'll let you tell you what he does at Salesforce, but he's here to talk to us about Heroku.
Hi, I'm Kevin Poorman, otherwise known as Code Fryer. I work at Salesforce as a technical evangelist. That means I work with our ISV partners to help them be successful on the platform, introduce them to new technologies, that's the evangelism side, and help them out with any technical problems that might arise, like security review or how to incorporate a new feature into their apps. That's what I do.
So are you the guy that everybody is supposed to blame when the technical review takes too long, or are you the person who helps alleviate their woes and fears?
I'd like to direct you to Rule 38 of the Internet. Always blame Reed Carlberg.
Oh, okay. Now you've got me wondering what the other rules are. I know one of the other rules, but I don't think we can talk about that here. So,
well, there's always Rule 39. If you can think of it, somebody's tried to do it and hit a governor limit on the platform.
I'm thinking of a map software. Does it have limits?
Everything has limits.
Damn. All right, fine.
I'm thinking we might have a new segment on the show. The rule of the day. We've already had 2, so we're going to have to cut and edit this and put it into 2 different episodes, Mark.
So like the Ferengi rules of acquisition, but for us?
That's exactly right, but you'll be the Ferengi. I'm obviously Picard. Anyways, we're here to talk Heroku. Kevin, what is Heroku?
Heroku is a platform as a service. What a great way to introduce that question. Anyway, Heroku is a platform as a service. We talk about Salesforce being a platform that you can develop apps on. That platform is very prescriptive in what you can do. You have to use Apex and JavaScript to write your applications, plus all the declarative tools we have. On the other hand, Heroku, you can pretty much use whatever language you're comfortable with. So if you are a Node.js programmer, you can write Node.js code and run it on Heroku. If you are a Phoenix developer,
I know Basic. Can I use Heroku with Basic?
Sadly, no. I think the only 2 languages I can think of that you can't run on Heroku are things like COBOL and .NET based stuff. So, I mean, you could probably wire COBOL up. There's probably a way to do it, but I don't know if it exists today. But Heroku will let you swap out whatever language you're looking for. It's sort of a choose-your-own-adventure software platform. You get to choose your language of development. You get to choose your data storage model. You get to choose sort of add-on features, and these all come through add-ons or elements that are added to your application. Those are things like Postgres or Redis, if you're a fan of that. You can also use Mongo for data storage as well. And these things you bundle them together, and you end up being able to put together an application stack that is customized for whatever you're most familiar with. And the best part about it is you can use Heroku Connect to grab data from Salesforce.
Okay, whoa. Okay, hang on. Wait, this is an admin podcast. Everything you've said is about code. Does Heroku have anything to do with admins, or is it just purely code?
Well, so let me first off start by challenging your definition of admin. Admins these days aren't simply creating users and resetting passwords. They're implementing custom business logic for their organization, and they're making huge impacts not only within their organization but within national and international companies. The fact that Heroku is more code focused than your typical admin might think of doing doesn't mean that it's outside their realm of expertise or outside the realm of what they're capable of. A lot of what Heroku gives developers on the Salesforce platform, including admins, is the ability to seamlessly move data to a platform where you can do custom calculations, custom computations on data seamlessly and securely through Heroku Connect. So that's a very admin-focused bit. What you can do is you're going to hook up and you're going to start moving data from Salesforce bidirectionally into a Postgres database on Heroku. Okay, so Brian's giving me like this. It's flying over his head. Let's think about it this way. Let's do a metaphor.
Okay.
Metaphors.
I can do metaphors.
Metaphors are great. So if a workflow rule or a process is a bit of custom logic that everyone's familiar and comfortable with as saying that's something admins do, then we can talk about what that's really doing. That's taking input, modifying it, and saving the results at a very high level. Heroku is going to allow you to do the same thing. You're going to take some data, you're going to move it to a platform where somebody can write custom computation for it, and then you're going to persist that data back in Salesforce or in perhaps a different system. Fundamentally, what we're talking about is moving data around and processing it.
All right, Kevin. I actually am familiar with Postgres and some of the terms. I've never actually had a chance to use them. But here's...
I knew some of those words.
Like of and the. So Marcus, we have one mic to share between three people, and Mark is absolutely infuriated. He can't say his piece whatever he wants. So here's the thing, Kevin. I'm a Salesforce developer. I know Apex. I know Visualforce. I'm learning Lightning components. Why would I want to build something in Heroku? Why would I want to move the data from one platform to another?
And that's a great question. And let's start by talking about scale. If you are the admin and the developer for your company, Heroku may not make sense for you because you may not have the scale or the resources in your company to implement a solution on Heroku that is more efficient than something you can write in Apex. If you're at a scale where you're the only developer in your company, it's probably something you're going to have to look really hard at to make a good use case for. On the other hand, if you're one of 5 Salesforce development teams for your global enterprise, and you've got a bunch of other developers in your global enterprise that are really, really good at, say, Ruby, you can utilize them to do custom calculations, custom computation on the Heroku platform, and leave your Salesforce developers to do Salesforce-specific things that have to happen on the Salesforce platform. So what Heroku gives you the ability to do inside of a Salesforce context is to leverage all the developers in whatever language your company is most familiar with, except for COBOL, and then turn around and use those developers and work with those developers to do the work that needs to be done, but on the Heroku platform, passing data back and forth to Salesforce as needed.
I suppose there's always the use case of you're building a tool that you want to make accessible to people outside of your company. For example, one of my favorite tools, the Perm Comparator, that's built on Heroku, and that's something that's just out there through a web access, and you just have to provide your credentials in order to get into the Salesforce data. So that could be another, I'm assuming, a valid use case.
Yeah, we've been talking about Heroku as in terms of a Salesforce context. That's sort of the metaphor of saying all semi-trucks are delivering groceries, which isn't true, right? Heroku is much more generic. It's your semi-truck of computational power using whatever tool you want. What we're talking about in the Salesforce context is this is, shipping data back and forth between Salesforce. Heroku...
Which is most of what our viewers or listeners are going to get to, right? That's most of it.
Exactly. But the thing is, Heroku doesn't limit you to that. So if you want to write an app and host it on Heroku, there's nothing stopping you. It doesn't have to have anything to do at all with Salesforce. In fact, I write a bunch of hobbyist Ruby code and throw it up on Heroku just as a place to have it sit there and run.
Throw it up. Blech.
This is a bad choice of words. One of the things that's really powerful about Heroku is that it's very source-based. So what happens when you want to deploy code to Heroku is you say git push Heroku master. Which is a very nerdy developer sort of thing, but it basically means that your source code is your source of truth. So that's different than Salesforce development, where you have an org that is a source of truth. That's changing with Trailhead DX, or excuse me, with DX, the developer experience. It's moving more to source-based, but right now you get that source-based development with Heroku out of the box, and you don't have that with Salesforce. So it makes it easier to write applications that that you can have multiple teams working on, all of them, pushing feature branches in and pushing them to production as quickly as possible.
So I've actually done a little bit of tinkering with Heroku. And these were the pre-Trailhead days. And my experimentation was a grand dumpster fire failure. Because as much as I've had some experience in IT, like Git has always just kind of gone over my head just a little bit. And trying to get that, the few tutorials that they had set up at the time were very developer-centric. So what would be the best way for an admin to get in and kind of kick the tires? Would it be Trailhead, or are there other good ways, other good methods, maybe any Git tutorials that you would recommend?
That's a great question, or rather 10 questions. So first off, let me talk about Git for a little bit. Git is a version control system. The best version control system, Kevin? So Brian's asking, what is a version control system? I'm glad you asked, Brian. That's a great question. A version control system allows multiple people to be editing files, and as they save them and commit them to the version control system, it snapshots that file. So if Brian over here writes a bug in the software, and he's writing along, writes some bugs in the software, he commits them, and everything breaks, and he goes home for the day because that's what Brian does. Mark over here can say, "Oh, there's what in the world, Brian," and he can go in and fix the bug, commit the bug to the version control system, and move on. Now, the trick to this is if Mark also introduces a bug and then goes home, because that's what Mark does. Kevin is the only one left at the office, and so he's going, "Oh no, the bug that Brian wrote, that was annoying. That's a typo. But the bug that Mark wrote, that's destroying data. So I need to revert Mark's change. I need to get rid of his change. With a version control system, I can go backwards through the versions of the same file, looking at what changed in each one. So that's what Git is. It's a version control system. And
I love the fact that one, you made yourself the hero of that story, and two, Mark was worse. Thank you for that.
And it's a shame. This is tangent, but it's a shame we don't have something like this for Salesforce metadata.
Well,
okay. I guess things like GearSet can do it, I suppose.
Well, as it turns out, with DX, you'll be able to take the metadata and store it in Git. And to some extent, you can do that today using any of your IDE tools. You can just build a Git repository of your source code. If you're downloading all of your object metadata, all that information is stored right there. You can put it in Git and move on. But one of the best Git tutorials is actually the one hosted by GitHub. GitHub is a software as a service hosted Git repository, and they've got a great tutorial where you work through and you actually are committing changes to code. It's text files, but you're committing changes and seeing how that all works. Working with pull requests, which is a way of saying, "Hey, I committed some changes, and I think Brian should look at it." And Brian can go, "Oh no, this will not work, Kevin. This is the worst code I've ever seen," and reject the pull request. Or I could pass it to Mark, and Mark, being the detail-oriented fellow he is, can just say, "Looks good to me," without opening anything and accept it.
I'm more likely to say, "God,
safe harbor."
Comment it.
Okay, this is why I don't work with Mark. No, so that's what Git is, and with Heroku, you can actually take and push your code from Git directly into Heroku. One of the best tutorials for that is actually on the Heroku site. I can help you provide you with a link for that for the show notes.
What is a link?
Keep the awkward silence in on that one.
I think I can best describe what a link is by saying, "Mark, you are the weakest link." No. But here's the deal with Heroku. Heroku allows you to deploy code, deploy apps, not only by writing code, committing it to Git, and then pushing it to get it to Heroku, but you can also just turn on thousands of apps that have been set up and are ready to deploy to your Heroku account. So the best way to do it is sort of kick the tires. Go to Heroku, sign up with an account. There's a free tier with Heroku, and when you've logged in, you'll be able to look at all of the Heroku elements and the push to deploy Heroku apps, and you just go through them and you can find all sorts of things. There's everything from a pivotal tracker clone to a Slack clone, all of which you read the description and click deploy. And it'll, since you've logged in, it'll just start deploying things directly to your Heroku account, tell you where to go to log into that application, and you've deployed an application that you can use. No coding involved. And as a developer, you can also take the applications you've developed and turn those into sort of turnkey solutions that people can just deploy and turn on.
So what have you deployed for you? Like, I'm sure you have, like, I know you have tons of personal projects and things like that. What are some examples of things that you've either deployed for yourself or for Salesforce, just things that you can do with Heroku?
So one of the best parts about Heroku is that there are so many different, what they call build packs available. And a build pack is a language-specific bit of functionality for Heroku that enables you to write code in that language. So there's a Node.js build pack. There's a Ruby build pack. There's an Elixir build pack. And if you want to sit down and learn a language and start playing around with how to work with, say, Elixir, which is a up-and-coming language that not many people know about.
That's in Final Fantasy. It's one of the things you drink to restore all your HP, right?
Similar, but slightly different concept. But you can set it up yourself with an example app from, say, the Elixir tutorial and deploy that to Heroku to see how your changes actually interact, to learn a language, to play around with something, kick the tires of a language, for instance. I've deployed probably hundreds of apps on Heroku. Everything from, I've worked with startups that were developing their Rails applications to do everything from, let's create an app that lets people sign up to bring meals to those who have just come home with a baby. That was an example app.
They're bringing their babies home on trains?
I'm not entirely sure how that went sideways.
You said it's on Rails.
Rails being a framework for Ruby development.
Oh, okay.
Mark's keeping me honest here. So one of the things that I like to do every year at Dreamforce is I put together a digital business card. And that digital business card is actually surfaced and served up from Heroku. Let's see. I just was working on a proof of concept for one of my partners that acts as a very small API shim to translate one serialization format to another so that they can better integrate into Salesforce. So you can literally do any kind of computation you can think of on the Heroku platform in whatever your language of choice is. So I tend to say that my first literacy language is Ruby. So when I was working with the proof of concept, I just wrote some Ruby code, put it up there on Heroku, and it's on the fly, does this serialization transformation.
So then I guess where the rubber meets the road for us is we as admins, business analysts, we're the ones who take these requirements that the business gives us and we try to figure out what the best way of doing things is. And I'm sure that sometimes that best way is going to be Heroku. How would we as admins, as BAs, as SAs, TAs, how would we then approach that? How would we go learn about what Heroku does and whether it's going to be a solution?
That's a big question. I think with Heroku and with Salesforce to a large extent, you have to adopt the attitude of always learning, always continuing to learn. And there's a lot to learn about Heroku. You got to learn what the add-ons do, what the turnkey out-of-the-box things that you can just deploy and use are. But I think I would tell people to start looking at Heroku Connect and Salesforce Connect and the functionalities of those. I know a lot of people who do Heroku work, who work with Salesforce, they know that that Heroku Connect can set up synchronization from Salesforce objects into a Postgres database. Not many people realize that it can also expose a Postgres database to Salesforce as an external object. And learning those little bits of functionality, especially the ones that are sort of the Salesforce-owned extensions on the Heroku platform, learning their details is pretty critical to being able to put together a meaningful, quick solution. So, for instance, you can hook up Heroku Connect, synchronize your account data to a Postgres database, and then use a turnkey solution to do address validation. We're not talking about like geolocation, but just saying, is it 131 East 91st Street or is it 131 91st Street East?
Checking against Post Office API.
Checking against the Post Office API, checking against addresses you've already checked, that sort of thing, and then getting that data back into Salesforce. So data cleanliness tasks. Anytime you need to work with surfacing data in another application, so like an ERP, perhaps you can use that OData export from Heroku Connect into your ERP. Depends on what your ERP supports. The idea being that there are so many tools out there and so many applications that you can simply just go turn on, that knowing what those applications you can turn on do and what kind of inputs they need or what kind of outputs they need, and turn around to start thinking about what kind of processes you can build. In a way, the ecosystem on Heroku is very much like Process Builder or Flows, where you have a whole bunch of tasks that you can add in and build together in sort of a process, starting with exporting data and then ending in returning data into Salesforce. Or maybe it's something as simple as you want to export reports and make those available to your partners in nice, pretty graphs. You can build something that does the pretty graphs and have them go look at that.
So it would be more like, as opposed to building a flow, which is a collection of elements, it would be more like building the elements themselves and how they work, and then being able to reference them.
Sure, you can build those elements yourself. But what I'm trying to convey is that there are hundreds, perhaps even thousands of elements that are already available to you that you can literally just turn on. Applications and add-ons you just turn on.
How does that, maybe I'm getting too far into the weeds, but how does that work exactly? Is there like a marketplace? I mean, I would assume there's still some configuration that has to be done, right? Like when you download Lightning components from the App Exchange, half of them you can't actually do anything with unless you go in and start tweaking it and copy-pasting that code into something else.
Yeah, so a lot of them there's going to be some lightweight setup, but Heroku does a really good job of automating most of it. So if you were to spin up a Postgres database on Heroku, when Postgres database it's a relational database system that lets you create tables or objects and store values, very much like Salesforce does. You can spin up a Postgres database, and what that does in the background for your account is it creates a database URL system variable. And if you turn around and then you spin up an application, let's say you're spinning up a time management application, and one of those already exists, and you just literally have to go in and say, I want to deploy this to a dyno, and it'll go create the dyno for you. A dyno is a unit of work. So it's not the same thing as like a virtual server, but it's the idea. It's a process, an application that's running. Okay, and that application will have access to that database URL, and so when you go to fire up that application, it can use the same database, access the same things that your Heroku Connect is using, and so you can grab data from Salesforce using Heroku Connect, and then make that available through the database to as a time management application. And you can say, okay, I'm going to mark my time in here, and you can sync those records back into Salesforce as a different record type, for instance.
So, I mean, Heroku is really all-purpose in that regard, because you could have it as just hosting your Postgres database and then syncing with Salesforce, maybe have some computation on the back end in Heroku, or theoretically you could have PHP spun up and actually have like a page that's served to people for your time management there without a Salesforce layer at all.
Yeah, and that's where the real power of Heroku lies, is that it's choose your own adventure isn't quite the right metaphor, but you get to choose the pieces and parts of the software stack that your custom logic, your application, and that custom logic may be just pieces of applications that other people have written that you're using in conjunction with one another, all together on your software stack. So you can have, in your Heroku account, you can have a dyno, a application running that's written in, say, Ruby for time management, and it's interacting with data from Salesforce. And then you can turn around and also add another dyno that's using an application that's written in Java. And that application is doing address verification and tying into a shipping API to do shipping of physical objects. So, and then all this flows together. So you could end up with an application system stack that looks like Salesforce for managing custom orders, doing, say, sample kits for electronic parts or something like that. Then your salesperson go, okay, I'm going to send this company a sample kit that has 5 transistors and a light bulb or something like that. And they can turn around and say, okay, that's great. And that gets kicked out over to Heroku as an order. It's an order object in Salesforce that's synced to Heroku as an order. Turn around, grab those parts, mark them as being pulled out of your ERP, and then send a shipment notification, print a shipping label through the APIs on Heroku to, say, I don't know, FedEx or UPS, and then send all of that together, the shipping label PDF, the parts list, and everything else down to the warehouse for them to fulfill the order.
Cool. All right. So if anybody has any more questions about Heroku, how it works, what should they do?
Go to Heroku.com.
All righty. Thank you, Kevin. He puts the hero in Heroku.
And if you want to follow Kevin, he can be found on Twitter at CodeFryer. And I'm sure he has his excellent website still up, right, Kevin? Kevin nodded. So you could definitely search for CodeFryer and Google and find his website too. Fryer, as in the religious order type thing, not like I'm going to fry your fries. Yeah. So thank you for your time, Kevin.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
WizardCast is produced by Brian Kwong and Mark Ross, directed by Brian Kwong and Mark Ross, technical administration by Brian Kwong and Mark Ross, scripting by Brian Kwong and Mark Ross, audio editing by Brian Kwong and Mark Ross, website maintenance by Brian Kwong and Mark Ross. These sausages from Soylent are actually pretty good. And our intro in this episode was El Gato.
Send us your interview suggestions, jokes, videos, tips, and feedback to wizardcast@thewizardnews.com or head over to thewizardnews.com and click Contact WizardCast.
Don't forget to subscribe to the WizardCast and receive our next episode automatically.
Please be sure you go onto iTunes. If you would please post a little review, share the episode around. It lets everybody know that we exist.
Yeah, and we're not a simulation of someone
Actually,
else.
we're here. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, this is not a test. This is a real WizardCast.
Once again, I'm Brian.
Y soy muy mal. Darth Maul.
Thanks for listening. That was awful. That was terrible. Oh, God. I hope they forgive us. It was awful.